This is the way you're supposed to, if you didn't know, this is the way you're supposed to hold the Rode microphones with your finger.
Here we
Your
go.
little fingy, like this, right? So you can talk into it, but I'm not going to do that because it hurts. I'm just going to talk into it like this.
But you can't take the heat.
I can't take the heat. We're actually recording this at our CORA headquarters, and it is currently very hot outside, so you can guess which day this was recorded. It's very hot. It's very hot. And we have some hot news.
Hot off the presses.
Literally, honestly. We have, if you don't know, I'm sure you know, the Northern Kentucky Regional Trails Plan.
The Regional Trails Plan. Oh, the Regional Trails Plan of Northern Kentucky.
Stuff's falling out. There's so many goodies in there.
We have so many outtakes. It just makes itself.
I love that. But yeah, so we had, Diana has been working a lot with Jason Reeser.
I mean, well, One NKY Alliance has been really the champion of getting this off the ground. Jason, the executive director of CORA, which many of you know, he kind of brought this grand plan and vision alongside several of our board members to the board of One NKY Alliance, and they are doing a lot of initiatives in the Northern Kentucky region to boost tourism, economic investment into Northern Kentucky. And, you know, that assumes many forms. And he was able to really make the case for trails and bicycle infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure as a community activator, as a destination quality amenity that cities can offer their own residents and communities and neighbors that live in and around Northern Kentucky, but also people who are visiting. So people who may be coming into town for like a sports game or, you know, visiting family, what have you, may have no idea that we have such a wealth of trails in this area. And so this is really the grand plan to connect them all and to identify more opportunities in Northern Kentucky to make this really a trail destination.
Yeah. So we're going to pretend that I know nothing about this. So this can relate to those who have heard about this plan, but maybe have a lot of questions around it. And, you know, this book, it's 199 pages. So we'll round it up to 200.
Yeah,
You know?
something like that.
And a lot of people might be like, that's a lot to read through. Can you just tell me? Well, I think it's really valuable if you really want to be invested in what's, you know, what we're trying to make happen with Tri-State Trails, One NKY Alliance, trying to make braided trail network. It wouldn't be a bad idea to flip through this. So one of the questions that has been asked is, will this be released for the public where they can purchase a copy of this plan, this book?
Yeah, that's kind of the goal right now. So we printed off some proofs so that we could have them available at the release event that we did on June 24th at the One NKY Alliance, or the One NKY Center. And this was very much, you know, like our first round of prints so that we could identify what's working well and make some final adjustments before we go to the presses with the final version and print it on some high gloss, like high quality paper. But what's really nice about this plan, because it does take a lot of effort to read through, you know, a very densely packed, informative plan, is that we've got a lot of supplementary graphics, and you know, this is a very story-driven kind of plan. Like, it's not just like, you know, kind of the jargon that you would hear at a table between like city leaders and government people and organizations that do the planning. It's also really created for the everyday person to kind of flip through it and read about the qualities and characteristics of, for example, the Doe Run Banklet Creek corridor. So, you know, there's description about what that area of Northern Kentucky feels like when you're moving through it, and then highlight some of the opportunity areas where, you know, there's a lot of intact wooded hillside where natural surface trails could be a possibility, and how they connect with existing trails around the Doe Run Lake area, and really unify that Banklet Creek corridor as one cohesive area. And then, you know, like there's a lot of information in here, and we really wanted to make it digestible and complemented with a lot of engaging graphics. So it reads more like a we've been told that it actually looks like a coffee table book too. And so once we get through the final round of revisions, it actually will be available to the public to purchase at local bookstores and online.
So that's great for you to have that in your hands at some point. You can get somebody else asked, is there a digital copy of this plan? And there is. You can visit coratrails.org/NKY-RTP. So Northern Kentucky dash Regional Trails Plan RTP. So you can sing it like a song, like coratrails.org, like NKY-RTP, just to help you remember it. But you can go and check that out. The digital PDF is available for you to look at. It is the edition that this is, so you can see what we're actually holding in our hands, and you're welcome to flip through that. I think a valuable question would be, CORA, Cincinnati Off-Road Alliance, and Tri-State Trails. Like, first of all, if you know anything about CORA, you know that we are, dirt trails, natural surface trails, and tri-state trails. If you don't know, they typically work with paved trails and accessibility. And there's been a lot of questions around, they saw us, you guys have seen us on the news recently, and we're riding around on paved trails, and that might create some confusion of, well, is CORA doing paved trails now? And so maybe you could help everyone understand what does that look like? Like, why? I know I'm asking multiple questions, so let me solidify this to one. Is CORA still doing natural surface trails?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So
definitely. There is a little bit of I guess clarity that we can offer from, behind the scenes because I mean, Cincinnati Off-Road Alliance, like this organization was started by volunteers building natural surface trails in the wooded hillsides of Cincinnati, um, and eventually Northern Kentucky, 30 years ago. And so that's very much always been, the foundation of this organization, and the why behind everything that we do is natural surface trails. So really, this partnership with Tri-State Trails was an opportunity for us to learn from people who have done projects at a really large citywide, countywide scale that we really just hadn't done within CORA before. So we were able to tap into the expertise of Tri-State Trails. Their team of planners and GIS analysts really lent an expertise that we were able to learn so much from. And had it just been CORA, I mean, we would have had a lot of there would have been some limitations to what we could have done just on our own.
Yeah.
And so the paved surface and natural surface trail concept is what we're calling the braided trail concept. And it really does use it applies the best of both surface types, right? So whereas like paved surface trails are more typical of what people think of when they think of like bicycling infrastructure, especially in urban spaces, natural surface is kind of like the best kind of connective tissue between those big like thoroughfares in a sort of way. So like for those of you that are familiar with like the Wasson Way, also really great work that Tri-State Trails have done. There are natural surface trail offshoots that are being integrated as part of that, but they weren't part of the initial planning phase. And so by getting in early and identifying where those opportunities lie in the planning stage, it ensures that we have people who can represent the natural surface aspect of the trail world when we go to like local government and when we apply for funding. And actually, we've identified over 200, I think the value is 252 miles of new natural surface trail alignment opportunities in this plan. And so it's very much baked in there, and you just kind of have to go through it and see what we've been able to cook up.
yeah, this is a really good example of how entities can work together and create something big for our communities. So when you're thinking of Tri-State Trails and you're thinking of CORA working together with cities, with stakeholders, with however you want to look at it, that's powerful to see two organizations come together to make something happen. And so we just want to make sure that's clear that we are collaborating. We are still natural surface. That's our focus. And CORA Off-Road Alliance, I mean, can seem confusing too. Off-road is only for, like, we're calling it dirt trails, so that doesn't necessarily allow dirt bikes and ATVs and things like that, which we're actually getting signage that it's going to be out, just to make some clarity around that as a sidetrack there. But I think it's really important to show that when you put accessibility between pockets of trails, that's exciting. That means that somebody who once couldn't get to that trail system because it felt too far away, they can actually get to these places by bike, by foot, however you want to do that, instead of getting in their car and coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to say, like, Tri-State Trails was their organization was amazing to learn alongside and to work alongside on this project. And truly, like, working alongside them lent a lot of credibility to CORA because they are familiar with these processes, and they were able to establish a lot of connections for us that ultimately will make getting natural surface trails planned, funded, and implemented a lot easier moving forward because we've got all the right people involved in the conversation early. So yeah, it really is like, had it not been for this collaboration, this project, and the potential for trails across the entire 3-county region, it just wouldn't have been at the level that we were able to get it to because of this collaboration.
Yeah.
So I very much credit them for helping us to make this the success that it was.
So, and then one more thought. So, when we had this release last week at 1NKY Center, hosted by 1NKY Alliance, we did a preview of the connector route. And so, me diving in a bit deeper into this amazing book, this amazing plan, we're starting to see that what is the connector route? She knows what page it was, of course. Oh my gosh, I'd be like, which page was that? I'm telling you, like, you've put a lot of work with this team together on this. This is exciting stuff. So, a few things. I know I'm asking a few questions, so we'll focus on a little bit. First of all, what is the connector route? And then let me ask the second question, and I'll come back to it. What is the connector route, and how does that create safety for those that might be a part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are great questions because the connector route, it can be kind of hard to understand like what this is and how it's a manifestation of the regional trails plan. But, for anybody who's watching, we're on page 147 of the regional trails plan book. The connector route very much is building on the established framework that was outlined in the Newport and Covington plan, which came out in 2024. And so really what that plan did was it identified routes within the urban basin, uniting Covington and Newport by identifying where the low speed, low stress roads are. And, that was kind of one side of the coin, but then the other side of the coin was what roads would serve as opportunity corridors for like a road diet in the future. So, like MLK is one example of a road that was identified in that plan that is wide enough where we could do a road diet and basically take it from, I don't know the exact width of it. I think it's like 100 feet wide. We could reduce the width of that and integrate some bicycling infrastructure. And it would become, like part of a more permanent solution for advancing pedestrian and cycling infrastructure in the urban basin of Northern Kentucky. And so the connector is very much built on the framework that was established in the Newport and Covington plan, but it's been kind of refreshed for an immediate, like, step one implementation. So basically, what we're trying to do with the connector route is identify those roads that are safe and that people who are kind of like within the inner circle of cycling, like people who already know their way around town, taking those roads that those people are already using and signing them and making them super visible so that people who maybe have not ridden their bike on the road before know that they can take this road and it's going to be a relatively safe, vetted route where they can hop on their bike and feel a lot more comfortable than if they were to just, kind of ride in some direction where there's not a whole lot of infrastructure or safety considerations. And so like the goal of the connector was to identify where the places people want to go, such as libraries, schools, grocery stores, business districts, places of employment, parks, green spaces, existing trails, and highlight the existing routes that people are already using and that are safe, um, and just illuminating them so that this kind of visibility and accessibility is more obvious to like the everyday rider.
Mm.
And so we're implementing this across the 7 cities in Northern Kentucky, starting all the way in Erlanger and working our way along the river cities, through Ludlow, Covington, Newport, Bellevue, Dayton, all the way to Fort Thomas.
What?
Yeah, so in total, it's about 34 miles of connected, signed routes, but this really is like the first step of implementing the RTP at large.
So Erlanger is near the airport.
Yeah, exactly.
So you think about somebody who is coming into this area, CVG, Cincinnati, it's in Kentucky, but you're starting in Erlanger, and they could be coming to this area for that specific reason, going, I want to try out these trails I've heard a lot of great things about. It could be a mountain biker, it could be a cyclist, it could be a hiker, whoever. And that's a great opportunity to get off the plane and get on a bike
Yeah.
or get on foot and go to a trail system.
Yeah, and
That's pretty cool.
That's kind of the long-term vision is like one day, and what I think another thing that we should mention while we're talking is that like the regional trails plan is a vision. Like it's going to take time to implement it. It's going to take time to get there and to have everything in place so that this can be a reality for our communities. But the goal is that one day you could arrive in Cincinnati or you could step out your front door and be able to walk or bike anywhere that you need to go safely. And that's and by means of paved surface trails and natural surface trails.
So I think most of our viewers, listeners may have heard of Bentonville, Arkansas, right? And so when we think of Bentonville, Arkansas, we think all these connected trails, all this really cool stuff. That started from nothing in what, 2001, 2002?
The early 2000s for sure.
So that's taken some time to make happen, but now we get to the benefit of going to a place like that. And so I think it's good to uh, share realistic goals and timelines of like, this isn't going to happen overnight. This is something that takes a lot of time, but it's really exciting as we start to see stuff pop up. Like we're already starting to see that happen. So I think it's really exciting. I think that there's going to be plenty of opportunity for people to try riding or hiking somewhere they've never done, specifically talking about CORA and natural surface trails. This just expands accessibility to that.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
Yeah, and like Bentonville is a great precedent for like what this region, can kind of emulate. But I think where they had the advantage of having a lot of private funding and, like the Walton family had a lot of influence in how the public realm and like that their area was able to be, kind of like create like how they were able to create that trail system with so much of that support from the Waltons. Everything that we're kind of doing here is happening at the grassroots level.
Mm.
And it's taking so much. Like I can't overemphasize how much collaboration has to happen and how many hands have to come to the table and voices and representation from each individual community in order for this plan to be visualized, but then to be implemented. And like while like we're not starting from nothing, like we have so much existing infrastructure in Cincinnati and in the northern Kentucky region, and we have these really wonderful cities that have alleyways and narrow streets. And like I mean Newport was like this was the this was like the Chicago of the like in its heyday in the 18 like mid 1800s. So like we have so much infrastructure that supported this people powered movement before all of the investment into automobile infrastructure. And I think we can really return back to that for the betterment of the people who live in these communities and in these neighborhoods that are like they are the ones who are driving the change and bringing this this plan to reality.
Wow. There's a lot in here. We could talk about this for
Ever.
forever. We could talk about it forever. But I think it would be great to, we want to give you some basic information now, but I think as we evolve this and if people are, more interested in learning more about what's in this plan, we can get more specific talking about wayfinding and signage, talking about, maybe some of the specific plans that are in here, maybe how the community can help, what that really looks like for everybody. I did want to answer or just bring up a few comments that have been left on social media, just so we want you to know that we want to be able to answer those kinds of things and not just feel like we're ignoring you. We want to make sure that we're providing right information. So there's a few comments I think that have been really helpful. We did talk about some concern about, CORA's talking about paved trails more than dirt trails. So I'm glad that we were able to dispel that a bit, knowing that we are focusing on natural surface trails and we're collaborating with Tri-State Trails to make this braided trail network happen. There was a question about, and I think this is a valuable one because this is Northern Kentucky Regional Trails Plan and it's Cincinnati Off-Road Alliance. Somebody commented, that's cool. How about connecting to Hamilton County as well? So can you speak to that at all about, that comment? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're thinking of trails as a systems, or thinking of trails as systems, is what I meant to say. And you can't have natural surface trails in a vacuum, and expect them to be accessible to everybody. And as a rider myself, I tend to ride my gravel bike, and I ride a hybrid style more often, because if I have to load up my bike onto my bike rack and then drive to a trail destination and ride, that's already a barrier to entry. Whereas I know the trails that are close to my home, and I'm going to get on my bike and start riding the second I get out the door. That's just my preferred riding style. And that kind of accessibility is what we're trying to grant to everybody, not just people who are kind of indoctrinated inner circle cyclists. But with that said, I mean, the Purple People Bridge is the gateway to Hamilton County from Northern Kentucky. And I mean, there have been so many investments into, safer infrastructure within that project in and of itself. And I really can't speak to the other bridge projects that are happening in Northern Kentucky, but that's kind of where the bottleneck is happening, right? How do we get this momentum that's happening in Northern Kentucky and kind of bridge that gap, literally, over to Cincinnati? But we've been working with Great Parks, and other really fantastic organizational partners to identify where those opportunities are in Hamilton County too. And I mean, we worked with Great Parks to get Avoca constructed and open just last year.
Yeah.
There have been, bike parks that have been conceptualized, funded, and opened at Mitchell Memorial and Mount Airy. And so there have also been some comments about connecting to the west side. And it's the opportunities are there. And we've talked with people about how can we make these possibilities realities. And really it takes willing collaborators. And if people in our audience want to see more trails in Hamilton County and on the west side, really the best thing that you can do is appeal to your local leadership. Appeal to your local government leaders, tell them that trails are important to you. These people are listening. I mean, I can really say that on the Northern Kentucky side. I've had so many conversations with these local leaders and, city representatives from each of the Northern Kentucky cities. And we're working our way, all over the place. So it takes many hands to make light work. So if you can appeal to your local leadership, that helps us in the long run too. So please put out the bat signal, tell your local leaders that this is important to you and that this is worth funding.
And that's a very good point. Your voice is important and your ideas are important. So don't be afraid to share those. I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up because again, we could be on here for 2 hours and I think it's probably been 30 minutes already.
Probably.
So one thing I want to mention is that if you're interested in learning and dabbling into this whole like mixed surface braided trail network riding style. I'm going to talk specifically about bikes. Join Tuesday Night Worlds. Tuesday nights, 6 o'clock, rolls out at 6:15. They have various groups. They have an A group that goes super fast down to the chillest of gravel riders, and then spicy mellow. We all kind of go around the city into Cincinnati. Sometimes we go into Kentucky. Every ride's different. There's never a repeat. Well, at least the ones I've done have never been
We try to
repeated.
switch it up. We try to keep it interesting.
But I think that would be a really fun way for the community to kind of get excited about it. Every time that somebody has ridden on one of those rides, they go, "Wow, I didn't know this was here." And that's the fun part of it.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah,
last
definitely.
night, like we rode and I was like, "I didn't know this was here."
Yeah.
So it's really exciting to explore what's around us right now and
Mhm.
just kind of imagine what can continue to happen in this area. So that's not a promotion, that's just a suggestion.
Yeah, I
So
mean, like I said, I think everything good that's going to happen is going to happen at the grassroots level, and I have yet to find a community that is as fiery and passionate and active as the cycling community. And it's because of the Tuesday Night Worlds ride that I have gotten to the level of confidence and proficiency riding that I have. I mean, that's one ride of many. I mean,
mhm.
we when we did the regional trails plan release on June 24th, we actually collaborated with Ride the Cove over in Covington, and some dear friends of mine were very enthusiastic about collaborating on a ride. And so when we departed from the one NKY Center, we had about 40 riders, and I was leading them over to Main Strasse, where Ride the Cove usually convenes, and they convene twice a month during the summer or between spring and fall months. But when we merged, we had 82 riders.
Wow.
And I mean, there were, to my knowledge, at least like a dozen people on that ride who had not been on a bike in years, had never ridden on the road before, and had like I had a couple of very dear friends who reported after the fact that they had the best time and that they went riding like over the weekend after the fact, and like they felt called to do more riding on their own. And it's just like that's oh, I have chills just thinking about it. Like that's why we do this.
He had goosebumps.
Yeah, it's a heat wave and I'm chills, like goosebumps. I'm sweating at the same time. But yeah, that's really why, like just speaking for myself, this is why I do this, is because like I think of cycling and being on a bicycle as like the most human way of moving through the world we live in. And this kind of joy is my reason for why I'm here.
Yeah.
Like I just want to spread that to other people.
Well, you could join Tuesday Night Worlds if you want. Tuesday nights, they meet at Reeser Bicycle Outfitters. I would suggest being there by 6, roll out at 6:15. There are also, if you're interested in hikes, mountain bikes, there are a lot of group rides in the area that you can get into. Feel free to reach out to us if you're not sure where to start on that, and we'd be happy to guide you in that direction. But for now, we're going to go ahead and say that this was what we did, and I hope you like it. And
Word up.
there's the book. Get the PDF. If you don't know who I am, I'm Jackie. This is Diana, and it was a pleasure talking.
Yeah. Thanks everybody who tuned in. This was fun.
And okay, bye.
Bye.